Hey everyone, today we're going to be taking some notes on evaluating and citing sources, and this will be important work for us to do before we work on our final research project. Now, if you are taking notes as you're watching this video and you're noticing that I'm going a bit too fast, you can feel free to pause the video at any time, or if you'd rather just watch the video now and take notes later, I'll also be attaching the link to just the slideshow without my video in my lesson plan document. So first, I just wanted to share with you the purpose of today's lesson. So I'm hoping that by the end of this unit, students will be able to evaluate potential sources that you can use for research. I'd like students to understand the importance of citing intellectual property. And lastly, students will be able to use MLA format to properly cite research in their writing and in a works cited page. So let's begin. The first thing I want to talk to you about is evaluating a source. So let's say that we are gathering research to use in a piece of writing or a project. Before we can just use any old source, we need to make sure to evaluate it so that we know that that source is reliable. In order to properly evaluate a source, we can use the acronym CARP. This acronym stands for currency, authority, accuracy, relevance, and purpose. So let's talk about each one of those components now. First, when we're looking at a source, we have to decide if the information is current. Okay, so it's really asking the question, is the source current or is the source outdated? This can be really important and critical if we're looking at, let's say, medical sources. The research that people conducted 50 years ago probably isn't the same as research conducted today. And so it's important that we're looking at information that's current, so we're not looking at something that's been outdated. Next, we need to make sure that the source has the appropriate authority. Okay, so this means that we're really looking at the author. Does the author have the appropriate authority to make the claims that he or she is making? We can also ask ourselves, is the author an expert in this field? Does the author know what they're talking about? Also, can we trust the author? Why or why not? If we can't trust the author, we probably shouldn't be sourcing or citing that information in our research. Next, we have to look at the accuracy of the information. Is the information that's being presented accurate? Are we able to fact check it by cross-referencing other sources? And we can also look, are there any errors? And that can include factual, grammatical, or conceptual errors. If there's any errors present in a source, again, we probably don't want to use it for our research. Next, we have to look at relevance. Is the information presented in the source relevant to our topic? If it's not relevant to our topic, again, we probably shouldn't use that information. And lastly, we have to look at the author's purpose. What is the author trying to get the audience to do? Depending on what the author's purpose is, might interfere with how reliable a source is. So again, if we can look at what the author is trying to accomplish, we can determine whether or not we should trust a source, which again determines whether that source is reliable. Now at this point, I want to take just a little break from talking about sources, and I want us to do a quick write. So I'd like you to pause this video, and then on your piece of paper, I want you to answer each of the following prompts. When you're finished writing, then you can hit play again. So here are your prompts. I'd like to know, what is your prized possession? Or, what is an object you are really proud of? Then I want you to answer the question, how would you feel if someone stole that object from you? Again, pause this video and take a few moments to answer each one of these questions. All right, you should be finished writing at this point. So now that you have answered the prompt, I'm going to share how I would have answered this question. So back when I was in college, I lived in the dorms, and in the dorms we all used the community laundry room. Well, there was this one day I was doing my laundry and I set a timer to make sure that I could go back to the laundry room to get my clothes when they were finished drying. And when I went back into the laundry room, I noticed that some of my socks were laying in front of the dryer, but the door was closed. I thought that maybe somebody was just looking for an open machine, and so they opened up the door, saw that my clothes were in there, shut the door, and looked for a new machine. And so I didn't really think much of it until I got back to my dorm room and I started folding my clothes. It was at that point that I noticed that someone had literally gone into the dryer and rummaged through the clothes to determine which clothes they wanted to steal. I'm not really sure who it was. I never knew or found out who stole my clothes, but whoever it was stole all of my favorite shirts. I think they ended up taking 3 or 4 different shirts of mine. In the end, I really felt violated. I felt angry, used, and cheated. I couldn't believe that someone would take something of mine, especially something like clothes. I couldn't believe that someone would be willing to walk around campus wearing something that they stole from me. Not only that, back in college, I had to work to pay for those things. And so I worked really hard to have the money to buy those articles of clothing. And so I just felt really gross that someone would steal them from me. Now, this feels probably like a weird rabbit hole that we're in. And so I want to answer this question. How does this relate to citing our sources? So now we're going to be talking about plagiarism. Here's the truth of the matter. If we take someone else's intellectual property, if we take someone else's words that they had wrote themselves and we use them in our own research and we put our name on that research without citing the information, we are stealing from those authors. We are committing intellectual property theft. So, since we talked about the different feelings that we feel when someone steals from us, feeling violated, cheated, angry, frustrated, it's important that we cite our information so that we do not steal from authors. Now keep in mind, it's still stealing even if we change a few words from research before we put it in our own writing. Okay? Now, it's so important that we learn how to avoid plagiarism because plagiarism can result in some pretty serious academic punishments, especially at the collegiate level. So if we are caught plagiarizing, we can fail an assignment, we can fail a class, we can be put on academic probation, or even worse, we can be expelled from a university or a high school, depending on different policies. So it's so important for us to learn how to properly cite a source so that we don't steal from an author. So on this next slide, I'm going to introduce a video to you. So I'm going to show you just a very quick video, and as you're watching, I want you to write down 3 to 5 things that you learn about in-text citations and the Works Cited page. All right, let's watch that video.
When you write a research assignment, it's important that you acknowledge the ideas or quotes from other sources that you use, right when you use them. Not only does this show that you're an honest and ethical student, but it also tells the reader exactly where you found that awesome piece of information. So, how do you give credit to other sources in your assignments? You use in-text citations, which can also be called parenthetical citations. An in-text citation connects information you're borrowing from a source to a citation in your bibliography, which helps teachers and classmates understand where the information originally came from. Include an in-text citation in your paper when you use a quote word for word from a source, or when you borrow an idea or phrase from someone else. In-text citations have to be written in a special way. They require 4 things in this order: an open parentheses, the author's last name, the page number that you found the information on, and a close parentheses. In-text citations are placed inside the sentence, so make sure that the period is outside of the parentheses. If you are using a source word for word in your paper, you need to put quotation marks around it. This is called a direct quote. Let's say that I found a sentence on page 20 of The Giver by Lois Lowry that explains an important part of the story. If I take all or even just part of the sentence word for word and put it in my paper, I would need to include quotations around it and add an in-text citation, like this. Let's say you want to explain something that happened in The Giver, but you explain it in your own words instead of taking it straight out of the book. This is called a paraphrase, and while you don't need to include quotation marks, you still need to include an in-text citation. This will give credit to Lois Lowry's writing and let your teacher or classmates know where the event happened in the book. Remember, make sure that the first word in the in-text citation matches the first word in the citation of your bibliography. That way, when people want to learn more about the source in your paper, all they have to do is look for the same word in the bibliography to find it. Let's review. The in-text citation takes readers to a specific citation in your bibliography, and the specific citation tells the readers where they can find the piece of information you used. There are special rules and exceptions for using in-text citations, so if you're unsure, check with your librarian or teacher, just in case.
So now that we've finished watching that video, I just want to highlight, using in-text citations and creating a works cited page, I think can sound really intimidating. However, if we know the proper steps to take, it's really not a scary process at all. So now that we've finished watching this video, here are our next steps. I want you to finish writing down the 3 to 5 things that you learned from the video, and then I want you to find the MLA format template on Schoology. I want you to follow the 7 steps that are outlined on that template because these steps will help you practice what you've learned today. If you have any questions about anything that I've talked to you about today in our video, please feel free to email me and I'll answer those questions as soon as I can. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye-bye.